Now, as far as him talking about these niche, these kinky websites, they do exist, because you have fantasies for all kinds of desires you might have. Fantasies you might think of yourself. Maybe the adult films will take it, distribute it for you. But these are simply fantasies. He's talking about a very, very select few. They exist, but it's not the majority of the business. I'll prove it. Well, there's who here ever saw a film called Pirates? Raise your hands. Okay. That film was one of the biggest selling films of last year, and had pirates, special effects, storylines, not or the things he talks about. That exists, but he got that off of sites called niche websites, kinky websites, not the majority of the business. Biggest selling films of the last few years were Jenna Jameson tapes, with 8,000 out the door, and they did not have, what was it? So he's talking about a very small section of the adult industry, and it exists. And for those of those kind of kinky fantasies, fine. But it's not the majority. And again, he says how the barely legal, showing young girls. Anybody ever hear what MILFs are? Anybody ever hear of MILFs? What does it stand for? They're just as many, and we looked at a survey together on a computer. There were just as many depictions of older women as younger women being depicted in porn films. In fact, they made a law called CPAA of 1996, which says right here, they actually arrested a film and busted the Tin Drum in Oklahoma. They busted it because they made a law. You cannot depict a person as a minor engaging in a sexual situation. It's called CPPA. It says here the police action was taken in the wake of District Judge Richard Freeman's ruling on Wednesday that the movie was obscene under the Child Protection Prevention Act, CPPA, which defines obscenity as any depiction of a person under 18, anyone portraying a person under 18 having sex or simulated sex. And because of this law, Adrian Lin couldn't distribute his movie Lolita. They took Blue Lagoon off the shelf, took the Tin Drum off the shelf. It actually affected more mainstream films than it did porn. But we cannot and don't depict people as minors engaging in sex. Max Hardcore changed all of his titles from college co-eds, high school co-eds to college co-eds. So no one is depicted in a porn film as a minor. Do we say barely 18? Yes. 18 and over. That's the thing, right? Now, and there are so many as far as the women who are being empowered, first of all, there's an organization about the whole feminist thing. This is right here from, again, USA. They're divided in their attitude about porn. And it says here, there are at least 4 different feminist positions on erotic labor, which includes things like pornography and prostitution. The second wave coming out of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s suggests that porn degrades and objectifies women. Today's third wave posits that porn can empower women and allow them to embrace their sexuality. Those schools of thought have clashed conspicuously on some campuses, where young women have begun producing their own sex magazines. In Harvard University, there's a magazine called H-Bomb. Boston University has a magazine called Boink. Women modeling, women running it, women producing it. In our industry, we have articles on women who run the business, who forming their own companies and have men that work for them. Now, when he says empowering women, one of the ways society measures success is when you make a lot of money. It's not the only thing, but these are all the girls who are becoming millionaires, okay? So I guess Craig would like these girls who haven't had a lot of college education to go to McDonald's. But here we have Tara Patrick. We have Jenna Jameson over here. These are all the girls who are now becoming multimillionaires. King Royale, Belladonna, Francesca Lay, Tella Wayne, Savannah Sampson, who's right over there, by the way. And she has her own winery. She took her money. Did you participate in defecation, urination, masturbation, rape, incest, torture? No, you didn't. Okay, good. So James Dobson is an idiot. Okay, here we go. Stormy Daniels. And it goes on and on and on. The girls who are running the business.
You've got 1 minute left.
Guys work for them. Here I have, and by the way, as far as children seeing porn, we're not trying to do that. Laptop porn. No one here has a cell phone provider that is showing you porn, because the technology is there, but while we can't prove age verification, nobody in this room is going to get a cell phone provider to show you hardcore, because we're trying to be responsible. Also, we have tons and tons of spywares. He advertises them. They have articles and articles on all different things. This is called the Exterminator Porn Alert released. They have this one here called the Guardian offers porn detector, so you can avoid your kids from seeing porn. It's not that tough.
So, Ron Jeremy there with a spirited defense.
I just got started.
We'll come to you in a second. Donnie.
Like Craig, I believe very firmly in freedom of speech and freedom of expression. I don't want to take that away from anyone. I believe that it's education and not legislation that changes people's hearts. So even though I'm a Christian, I don't believe in legislating the porn industry. But before I continue, one of the things that Ron said about he'd be arrested if he used the word what about Dustin Diamond film that just came out?
He faked it. Someone tell him what it really is.
But the thing was is that you said that we would you'd be arrested if you used that title.
I can't
anyway,
shoot that. I cannot shoot that.
We'll enter the debate in a minute. Carry on, Don.
Okay. But what I was wanting to say is that freedom of speech and freedom of expression is great, but just because we can do something doesn't mean that we should. We're intelligent human beings. We're not animals. And when what we're doing is costing someone else and causing pain to someone else, we probably shouldn't be doing it. My opponents are going to tell you that porn's beneficial to couples because it spices up their sex life. And to that I would say, if you need porn to spice up your sex life, I think your problems are a little bit deeper, and you should stop trying to cover it with the Band-Aid of porn and deal with the root issues. They keep on bringing up the amount of money that's to be made, but on stage we have 2 successful people in the business. These are not the rule. These are the exceptions to the rule. Normally, for every Ron and every Monique, there are hundreds of people who didn't make it. They might have only lasted a couple of weeks, maybe a few months. The average person in the business goes maybe 2 years, sometimes a little bit more. So what happens, though, afterward is they can't get a job anywhere. I've had girls who modeled for me in college. I wasn't dealing with broken people. I was dealing with educated students. And they would come in. They would think that porn is harmless because they've bought into the lie that our society has shown them. They'd model for us, spend the money on rent, and then that content remains until they're a grandma. Their grandkids are going to be whispering behind her back about what happened when Granny was a young adult. I've had girls who have lost positions with Fortune 500 companies because after they've been employed, it comes up what they did for me. This is the type of thing that happens over and over again, and that's the part of the reason I had to get out of the business. I couldn't handle the guilt. I'd be on vacations. I made a great amount of money, and I had a great lifestyle, but it came at the cost to the people who I was putting in front of the camera. One of the things, too, that I'd like to mention about that before getting into more stories is that it's easy to hate the porn producers. That would be the simple way out. But we have this thing called the law of supply and demand. So if there was none of you out there creating the demand for this, I couldn't have made money on the supply. So the broken lives that result from this are all of our faults, every person that consumes it. I recruited over 500 models in my 9 years in the business. I've had not one come back happy about it, but I've had dozens and dozens begging to have their content removed. I had a girl, Chantel Fontaine, that was her name. She was a Penthouse pet. I was sitting in Playboy's office because I contracted with them for a while, and the vice president I was speaking to offered $10,000 a month contract to her. When I took it to her, after she'd been in the business for 18 months, she says, you know what, I would rather go work for minimum wage at a department store. And that's what she did. And she never did hardcore. All she did was softcore. But you know what happens? I have another girl. She was making 10 grand a month on her site. She was 18 years old when she started working for me. You know what started happening to her? She'd be walking around at parties. She'd get drunk. Guys would think that simply because she was a porn star, they could have their way with her. She was raped repeatedly. She was impregnated and has a baby that she has no idea who the dad is because it was a product of rape. This is not stuff that just happens occasionally. Now, maybe the girls aren't getting raped, and maybe there are some who do enjoy it, but the majority of them don't. You don't see between takes models curled in a fetal position sucking their thumb. You don't see on the screen over and over again the takes. You don't see them puking. You don't see them looking at men. A lot of the girls that I worked with end up hating men. There are a few examples. There's one here, but she's getting paid a lot of money, and she's a contract girl. She's got a secure future, but that's not the majority. I had another girl. She went to her college campus and found photos nailed on her tree, on the trees of the college campus. Another girl walked out, her dad walked out of his place of business with his buddies, found his car covered with pictures of his daughter. She says, my daddy, I've been a daddy's girl all my life. He won't speak to me right now. We caused this by consuming porn and believing the lie that we need this, or that it's okay. Yes, it's okay. We have the freedom to do it. But like I said, just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. I'll read you a letter from a former model. I'll try to make it quick. This model didn't do hardcore porn. She only did softcore.